Hey y'all, taking a minute to interrupt this podcast episode with a brief ad about Anchor. So if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain further. First of all, it's free, and it's the platform that I use to record my podcast. Some other cool things about it are there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, which makes it super easy. Because I'm not the techiest person out there, but I really enjoy Anchor for that purpose as well. And another cool thing about Anchor is that they will distribute your podcast for you. So you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play, and even more platforms that I haven't even heard of. So that's a really fabulous aspect about it. You can also make money from your podcast too with no minimum listenership, which is really nice for us newbies out there in the world trying to get started. And it's really everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So with all that being said, I encourage you to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And you should be good to go from there. Thank you to Anchor for sponsoring this portion of the podcast. Hey y'all, my name is Briley Casanova and I am a mental performance coach. I help athletes reach their full potential while working through mental challenges within their sport. For example, I help athletes learn how to perform better under pressure, whether that's learning how to see competition differently with mindset shifts or learning relaxation or energy management techniques. I also help with goal setting, leadership, maintaining focus, and overcoming fear. My goal is to help others find their inner confidence and self-trust, which hopefully leads to further success and joy in their sport. Let's get started with today's episode. So, after the past couple days of, thinking about, my second episode choice for this podcast, I wanted to start with, talking about how the Pursuing Excellence podcast name came about. And I also wanted to, in that process, I learned a lot of feedback from friends, family, and just people on social media that have been following my journey. So through that, I was talking about this process with friends and, one of my really good childhood gymnastics friends that I've, really grown up with, and we've recently, gotten reconnected. She came up with the PEP. So PEP, obviously the Pursuing Excellence podcast. So she came up with the pep talk. I think that concept is so cool because it fits in. She said it fits in really well with my personality, but I think it fits more with just the meaning behind the podcast and, just pursuing excellence in general. I mean, that requires, we all need a pep talk here and there, So Charlie, I owe all credit to you on that. I don't know how I will repay you, but I will find a way or think of a way. So just so y'all know a little bit of the background with the pep talk, that's where that came from. I think I have really great people around me, really supportive people and smart people. So I really want to shout out Charlie for coming up with the pep talk idea. So this is pep talk number 1, I guess, episode number 2, technically. But anyway, moving on, let's transition into talking about our main topic today. So one of the things I was thinking about when, creating this podcast and, trying to come up with ideas for future episodes and things, I was thinking about, if I was listening to this podcast, what would I want to hear? I haven't gotten a whole bunch of feedback from other people about what they want to hear yet, just because this is so new. I've gotten a really good few chunks of information, but not like an overwhelming sense of feedback. So I'm just kind of going with my gut and starting with what I would want to hear, I think. And then as time goes on, I definitely have plans to, have guest speakers. I have a co-host, I think, for a couple episodes in the future as well already figured out. But if you're listening to this now, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll go over my, contact info and social media accounts at the very end. But, reach out to me and let me know if you have any certain feedback or questions or comments or things you want me to cover, because I really want to know, you guys. I want to hear from my audience, learn from you, and give y'all the knowledge and, information that you guys want. So that's really important to me. So I did want to put that out there as well. Especially in these early stages. So with that being said, thinking about what I would want to hear, I also was thinking what would it be like on the other end, not just what I would want to hear, but of course what other people would want to hear. And speaking of learning from you guys, what a question that I ask my clients right now, every time I get a new client, the first question I ask them is, what is your sports story? And basically what I mean by that is, I basically want to know, like, catch me up on your experience in your sport until, this current moment in time. Like, I want to know all the details that have basically, where you started from and how you got to this current point, because the more clear of a picture that, a client or, an athlete can paint for me, the more I can understand and hopefully better help them in terms of like the issues they're going through now. So I think the main thing I really wanted to cover today was maybe going over my sports story. And I'm not really sure of the details. I guess I'll go through just yet. I'm just gonna kind of, speak from the heart and see where that takes me. But basically, the main, I guess, point of, me talking about my sports story today is I want, if you're an athlete listening to this, I want you to just take some time and think about, what's your sports story? And I know we're all at different phases in our careers, different ages, just different levels even, or just different chapters of our life, basically. So I don't know. I just think that that's important to think about, because sometimes we get caught up in the daily stuff and maybe thinking really super far ahead in the future, but we don't look back and see how far we've come. And I think that's where a lot of our confidence can stem from as well. So I guess with that being said, I'll start from the very beginning, and maybe this will kind of give you an idea of like where maybe you've started, but just for some more background on my sports story. Again, I'm Briley Casanova. I'm now retired from my gymnastics and athletic career, but I started at the tender age of 1.5, I think. I don't even think I was 2 years old yet, and my mom put me in one of those, mom and taught, mommy and me classes. And really, so gymnastics is really all I've known. It's been my entire life up until 3 or 4 years ago now at this point. Gosh, I keep forgetting it's 2020 and I graduated in 2016 from the University of Michigan. So it almost feels like it was yesterday, but it also feels like it was eons ago, like a completely different life. But anyway, back to, where I started. So, like I said, I think I was 1.5. I was younger than 2, hardly walking, did the mommy and me class. And then, fast forward to a couple years later, I think I started, getting more into actual gymnastics skills when I was 5 or 6, I want to say. And I might have to go back and ask my parents to fill in the dots and fill in the blanks on that part. But I started out at Kurt Thomas Gymnastics in Dallas. I think it was before they moved to their current location today, if I'm not mistaken. So I started there first, and if you know me, you know that I also have a younger brother who was a gymnast, and he had such a great career. I'm really proud of him. But basically, the reason why I started at Kurt Thomas at the time, but then I ended up moving to Woga Gymnastics in Plano. Because Kurt Thomas, I don't think, had a men's gym at the time, or they didn't have like a men's program at the time, or I don't even remember if that was like even in the works yet. But basically, my family moved from the Kurt Thomas gym to Woga Plano, so that way my brother and I could both do gymnastics at the same place at the same time, and it was just easier for us. So yeah, I think I must have been like 5 or 6. Like I said, I don't think I was at Kurt Thomas for more than a couple months or even a year. So really, if you ask me, I consider myself to be a Woga girl through and through, because once I was at Woga, that's where I stayed and completed my entire gymnastics journey before college. So yeah, so since I think I started there, I was in like the rec program, and then I think I went directly into level 4, I want to say. But the first time I actually tested to get into level 4, I remember my parents telling me, that Evgeny Marchenko was I just wasn't ready yet. It wasn't never an issue or anything. But I remember I didn't start out hit the ground running from a super young age, being super ready to go. I was just, I don't even remember what was missing there, but basically I was, I wasn't ready to start level 4, but then eventually I started at level 4. I think I was like 7. Maybe I think I was 6 or 7. Like I think at this point I was 7, maybe even 8. I don't quite remember like the numbers and if the ages are lining up right. So I could be wrong about that. But basically moving from level 4, I did level 5 twice because back in the day, that was like the typical pattern. Like usually you repeated level 5 and then maybe after that, maybe you skipped a level, whether you went straight to 7 or I don't know, everyone I think kind of had a different path, but generally that was kind of the way it worked. And this was also back when level 7 was like the first optional level. So if you're like a current gymnast, I know it's a little bit different. Like they've changed, I think level 6 is now optional. So it's slightly different now than it was back then, but I'm just kind of trying to fill in, a couple of the blanks there in case you're curious about some of those details. But anyway, yeah, I encountered a lot of injury, fear, lulls in my confidence. I mean, you name it. I've had pretty much every experience you can think of in the gym. So at least during my club gymnastics career, I think my first major injury was when I was 15. I broke my wrist. That was really tough. And then like promptly after that, I had an ankle injury. It was basically just a whole bunch of scar tissue building up from, twists and, tears and, falls. Like taking all those hard landings was really tough on my ankle. So I remember when I was 15, like one of like the, I guess more like kind of funny moments that I look back on, but something that really reminds me that I can get through like anything, I think, or at least most things, because I know it's not completely applicable to everything, but with that first major injury, so I had a broken scaphoid, and so basically your scaphoid is this teeny tiny little bone in your wrist that it doesn't quite get a lot of circulation, so I had to have a screw like put in my wrist at the time. So like I said, so I had that wrist surgery when I was 15, and I remember getting my cast like on my birthday, like my 15th birthday. So I guess I heard it when I was 14, got my cast when I turned 15. And then I think it was like that next summer. The details kind of escape me, but the premise is I had that wrist surgery, and then I ended up getting a boot on my left ankle. So imagine me with a cast on my right wrist and a boot on my left ankle. And then I remember right after that, I ended up getting my driver's license. So I took my like driver's test and everything, with this cast and this boot. It was so funny, just like going to the DMV and like getting all these funny looks. And I, of course I had to get like certain doctor signatures and like physical therapist signatures, but I ended up getting my license like a year early. or I guess 6 months early at that point. So a little while after I had gotten my surgery, I, completed that whole process. And so I just remember driving from, like my house and the gym to physical therapy, like with like this cast on my arm and this boot, so just, I don't know, looking back, that was really funny, but I look back on that time in my life frequently to just kind of remind myself, like, I don't know, like the problems I have now are like, they're different, but it's a good reminder to look back on the tough times in the hard times and, look at how far you've come. So if there's anything you take away from like looking back on your sports story or, maybe if you're still writing your story, like, I don't know, I hope you can take away the good things and even the funny things and not just see all the tough times as super duper negative, because I'm definitely guilty of that though too. I will say, like, I've gone through even like worse things, I guess you could say, like not necessarily injury wise, but like maybe emotionally. But I've gotten through those too, like to this day. I still look back and like learn from, how far I've come, and it's a lot more clear to me now than it was in those moments. And I am really grateful and really glad to have gone through, all those hardships looking back. So, okay. So that was like first major couple injuries that I had in my career. And then, so that was when I was an elite. So I think I went elite. I think I was 13. Maybe I was like 12 or it was 12 or 13. So tested elite, did all that, had a couple great years on the national team. I was on the national team from 2008 to 2010. So, luckily like those injuries, like they hurt me during that time of being an elite, but I managed to compete around them. So I remember, I think I first noticed my wrist issue, like it was like towards the end of the season, in 2008, I think. Or maybe maybe that was 2009. I don't remember. It was something like that. But anyway, I guess the years don't necessarily matter. But anyway, so moving on after my elite career, I had one last year of club gymnastics before I went to University of Michigan. So I went back down from elite to level 10 then. And I think for me, it was probably just the best move in terms of like maintaining my physical health, like just avoiding injury, staying healthy, not doing as many like, it's a huge difference in routines from, elite and level 10. It's just this huge jump in difficulty. So for me, that was the necessary move I needed to make. And then it turns out like I was trying throughout my high school years really hard to graduate early from high school to go to the University of Michigan, because it turns out looking at my credits, I think when I was like a freshman or a sophomore, we had all noticed like I'd actually gotten a lot of credits out of the way and credits done, because I even I went to summer school. So like I guess to kind of go back in time a little bit just to get y'all like up to speed in terms of the context. So I went to public school all the way from like as a child until 4th grade. So then in 5th grade, I moved to basically a private charter school. I really don't know how else to explain it other than that. And if you're curious about what that is, you can, feel free to look it up. It's basically a school for like if you did an extracurricular activity for more than I think 15 hours a week, like that was like the minimum hour, generally speaking, that was like the minimum requirement of extracurricular activity to be able to apply to this school. So I ended up, doing that from 5th grade all the way until 12th grade. But so I think my freshman year, I'd already, like, I think in 8th grade, I started taking like high school level classes. And I think that's what kind of got me started in terms of adding credits that I could get out of the way. And then, so I think even all the way from 5th grade to the end of high school, I had gone to classes during the summers too, to kind of supplement what I would be missing during the regular school year and the regular gymnastics season. So that's kind of how my school worked. So like, I really didn't get much time off, looking back. And, so that was kind of crazy and just a different way of growing up compared to like the rest of my peers. And I guess the rest of like what I guess the average kid would do. So anyway, I guess fast forward, I managed to graduate from high school a semester early. I got into Michigan. That was like some of the hardest, stuff I ever had to do. I had such a hard time with math. Like that was a huge thing that set me back. Math is just not my strength, and I required just like even extra teaching because I was already doing a lot less school than most kids were doing. And so I had to work super duper extra hard when it came to the math. So even just outside of like sports and academics for me were a big challenge, but that kind of just came with the territory, but I do consider like academics and sports like that, they all tie together in my sports story. Because really sports were my life. I'm sure if you're an athlete listening, like you totally understand what I mean by like your sport is your life. It's not just something you do. It is who you are. It's a huge part of, your identity. So that's been something like now that I've been done, I've had to really like wrestle with and, think about all the time and try and find my value outside of the gym and outside of sports. And athletics, because I really find that, school was really, really difficult for me, but gymnastics, like while it was hard, it was actually, I think I was a better athlete than I was a student. And I had to learn like after my undergraduate career that I had to work really hard to be a better student. And I think I ended up figuring that out in grad school, but I'm really glad I went to grad school, to find that out and, just work through that process. So anyway, I'm trying to think of anything I missed. Oh yeah. So my college experience. So after high school, got into Michigan a semester early. So imagine like, I remember, flying to Michigan on Christmas Day with like as much stuff as I could pack. And then, so I got to Michigan on Christmas Day of 2012. And, so I graduated high school on 12/12/12. So that's like 2 weeks later. So I graduate high school on December 12th, fly to Michigan on December 25th. And then I think 3 days later or 4 days later, we fly to Cancun for our first meet together. My first college meet is like 3 days after I get there. Hardly get to train with the team. And then I think we competed on like New Year's Day or January 2nd or something. And I just remember like that was the start of like the rest of my gymnastics career. And I think I competed vault. Like they wanted to start me out like right away. But the event that like I guess was like most reasonable for me to start with was vault. And I didn't get to change my floor routine much. Like I kept my club gymnastics choreography for my freshman year of college because there just wasn't time to change that. So that was kind of funny and interesting. Like I just remember feeling like, man, my routine is so different from everyone else's. But being unique, and I don't know, I thought of that as a positive thing too, because you want to, I don't know, I like that feeling of being unique and individual. I don't know, maybe it didn't look good on the outside for other people, but I always still cherished and valued that routine because, I don't know, that was just really special to me, and I'm glad that I got to compete that and show that choreography in a college setting. And then I got, a couple more really great, fun, different routines after that too. So I don't know, I don't know if anyone else knew that at the time either, but so that was one aspect, I guess, of my freshman year that I remember and just kind of thought that was funny. So after that, I don't know. Yeah, I'd say I had a really pretty great college gymnastics career. I was very lucky to, remain, relatively injury-free up until my senior year. Of course you get the aches and pains, stuff happens. I had a concussion. I had a lot of, just ankle issues, just, residual from my time in club. It's just constant, like, holding yourself together literally with tape and getting massages and, taking ibuprofen, just trying to keep yourself together. But I don't know. I think it's that tough stuff again that like kind of it stays with you, and it's all a part of the process. I mean, you'll hear me probably talk about in future episodes that it's really about the process and like making progress over perfection. If you're one of my clients in my group sessions or even individually and you're listening to this, like I talk about this stuff for a reason, and it really is like looking back, it's about all of the process and the progress I made over those years, and not about the times where I was close to perfect, and as much as I value and cherish those times, I still can't say that I ever got a perfect 10, and that's okay with me, even though, of course, that's what I strived for the entire time. I really wanted that, and that's, I feel like, what everybody wants. But I don't know, I feel like even if I could look back and say I got the perfect 10, I would still feel just as good about my experience that I had. So that wasn't like a huge like letdown for me. I don't feel like I missed out. I know several people who've gotten multiple 10.0s in their career, and I really aspired to have their, confidence and success. But at the same time, I'm really proud of them. But I'm also really proud of how I handled, my career and what I did, and even things maybe that I didn't do. I feel like I don't regret anything, so I am really proud of like where I am now and how all of like my entire sports story has come to put me where I am today. So I know I just talked a lot about me and like my sports story, but I guess what I want to leave you with is, if you're still writing your sports story, whether you're still doing that, you're still a young athlete, or maybe you're done, maybe you are retired and you're trying to find yourself after sport. What I want to leave you with, I guess, is how do you approach the daily grind? Like, how are you going to approach whether that's practice or maybe that's school or your, work career? What I want you, well, I encourage you, of course, don't take my word as, the end all be all, but what I would love for you to maybe just look at or see your sport as, or your just maybe life. It's a marathon and not a sprint. So I think I didn't hear that enough. I think growing up, especially in club gymnastics, and it's not anyone's fault. Of course, I'm not trying to like blame that on anyone, but looking back, if I had, really learned to take each day, day by day and just really enjoy it and appreciate it even more, I think that would have just, given me that extra sense of like enjoyment and love and joy for the sport, because there were definitely times where I think I lost it, and I've seen other people lose it too. So if anything, I'll just repeat this one more time. I encourage you to see your sport as a marathon and not a sprint. So I hope that means something to someone out there, no matter how old or young you are. I don't know, like I said in the beginning, that's something that I wish that I would have heard more of, just would have been more reminded of. And so that's why I wanted to share my sports story with you and share that little tidbit of information with you. So to close out our episode today, thank you so much for listening. Please check out my social media platforms, and you can find me on Patreon, and that's where you can find exclusive updates and a chance to give me direct feedback for future episodes. Just search Briley Casanova and you should find me on Patreon there. And that's just patreon.com/Briley Casanova. That is the link. So go ahead and search that. I'm also on Instagram as Mental Coach Briley, and I'm also on Twitter as Mental Coach Bry, and I keep my direct messages open on both of those social media platforms. So if you want to reach me there, my DMs are open. You should be able to get me quickly. Or if you want to, a more personal email, my email is Briley, Briley, at CompletePerformanceCoaching.com. And you'll also know that the company that I work for is called Complete Performance Coaching. So you can also find me there at www.CompletePerformanceCoaching.com. Again, feel free to reach out to me with questions and feedback you have. Your input is valuable and important to me. So please help contribute to my growth and knowledge. And with that, thank you again for listening, and I'll see you in my next episode.